those of you joining us on our Facebook live stream, we're glad you're here as well. Our reading this morning is from the book of Exodus, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 15. Picture this. You are Moses, and you are out tending your father-in-law's flocks. You're wandering around, taking them to good grass and fresh water throughout the countryside. As you're leading your flock around the wilderness, you come up to that big hill north of Valparaiso. I'm sorry we don't have any Mount Horebs around here to work with, so we got what we got. And the highest point in Lancaster County is north of Valparaiso. So, picture this. All of a sudden, a bush bursts into flame, and you hear Morgan Freeman's voice telling you to come no closer and to take your sandals off because you're on holy ground. And then, verse 6, he said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. What's your first reaction? What would you do? What would you say? Would you say, God, buddy, dude, how you been? What's going on? Would you run screaming in fear back down that hill north of Valparaiso? Well, Moses kind of split the difference. He stood his ground, he stayed there, but he turned his face away. He hid his face. Because to see God live and in person in those days was considered kind of this ultimate thing, the penalty of which is you were going to get zapped from the face of the earth. Moses didn't want to do that. So he turned his face away. Having stood his ground in the presence of the Lord, even while hiding his face in fear, Moses then gets to hear the story that God wants him to understand. A story of a people lost into the fear and greed of an Egyptian Pharaoh who put them under the yoke of slavery. A story of people yearning to be free once again after 400 years of being held in a foreign land as forced laborers. A story of the Israelites seeking to escape from Egypt and return to their homeland, the land of milk and honey. They can't do it on their own. They need God to help them. They need God to do part of this work. And so God is sending Moses, telling Moses, so come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. This is a bit of a challenge for Moses. If you remember his story, Moses is actually born into an Israelite family. One of the families under Pharaoh who was afraid of them, and so the male children were supposed to be killed off. Moses' mom doesn't want this to happen, so she puts him in a wicker basket, what amounts to, and floats him down the Nile River, hoping that whatever comes next will be better than what Pharaoh has in store. Now, ironically, it is Pharaoh's daughter who is the one who puts into play the situation that saves Moses from his fate. Moses is plucked from the water and becomes, indeed, as the daughter wishes, a prince of Egypt. And he rises to high station in the Egyptian hierarchy, up until he kills an Egyptian, and now is under sentence of death from Pharaoh and exiled from Egypt, which is how he finds himself out tending his father-in-law Jethro's flocks on that hill north of Valparaiso. No, wait, that's Mount Horeb, sorry. Not only is Moses dealing with a bush bursting into flame, the voice of Morgan Freeman, and speaking face to hidden face with God, he also has to contend with the idea of God calling him to return to a place where they want to kill him, where Pharaoh wants to kill him. Now what, Moses? What will you do? Indeed, isn't that the call that most of us have to contend with and must answer? Now what? What will you do? It's not likely that most of us will have a bush bursting into flame, the voice of Morgan Freeman, and speaking face to hidden face with God, nor are we likely to be called to a situation where the people there want to kill us. And yet God is calling on us. And this story tells us the importance of being ready to answer God's call in our lives. Moses didn't think he was qualified, and he argued with God. I'm not saying you can't argue with God. I argue with God on a fairly regular and frequent basis. But this is what I know from those arguments. I'm not going to win. So arguing with God is kind of a fool's errand in most cases, because God knows what's going on. And God is going to put things into motion the way God wants. God calls on Moses to go and save the Israelites. Now think about, if God can use Moses to go and save the Israelites from 400 years of slavery, think about what God can do with you. One of the struggles that many of us have is hearing what God is telling us to do. Our busy lives can seriously get in the way of this. The only solution I know to this is to spend time with God in prayer. I won't dismiss the possibility that God will get your attention by exploding a bush as you walk past. But I don't think that happens as frequently as it used to. So don't wait for the exploding bush. Probably not going to happen. More likely you're going to encounter God, you're going to hear God when you are in prayer with God. The other thing that comes to mind, and this is a little less tangible, so it's hard to describe, but I'll give it a try, is what some people call mindfulness. God can and will speak to you in strange and mysterious ways, but if we're not working on being aware of God, the possibility of God speaking to us, then we can miss that too. I wish I had a specific technique to lay out for this. Do this or do that, and God's voice will miraculously appear, and you'll know everything that God wants from you. That has not been my personal experience, so I don't know that there is a specific way that I can tell each of you how to do this. But I know that prayer, devotions, Bible reading, and these kind of things can be active parts of this. And even meditation. I don't know if you've ever tried that. It's a good way to clear out the chaos and pandemonium of noise that's running around in most of our heads. And like anything else that is worth doing well, mindfulness, all those things, prayer, devotion, Bible reading, meditation, it takes practice to be good at. The first time I tried meditation, it was infuriating. There's apparently a lot of chaos and pandemonium going on in the back of my head. But over time, I got pretty good at it. Anything worth doing well is worth practicing. Just make some time for God. And take some practice to get good at it. When it comes to doing what God wants you to do, it's also good to keep in mind there are any number of ways to serve God the way God is calling. Now we have the kind of the stereotypical things that we do. We think we'll serve God best by going to church and doing something to serve God at church. And that's certainly worthy of doing. We have all kinds of things going on here. Worship being one way. Altar care, they do their thing here almost exclusively in the church. And there's lots of things going on in the church. All good stuff. Faith formation. All good stuff. But that's not all there is to it. We can serve our community as well. And in ways that don't necessarily involve Spirit of Hope directly. I know a guy that maintains a ball field, softball and baseball fields during the summer. That is his way of serving God, because he's out there doing that. I know a guy that will get in his truck and go out with his ham radio to watch storms. That's me. Is it doing Spirit of Hope stuff? No, it's not. But it's important to the community. And the people at Dairy Cream, or whatever that one was called there in Southwest Lincoln that got smoked by that tornado last night. The ham radio operators, they made a difference there. So we certainly serve the community. My point is, there are ways that we don't think of serving God that absolutely serve God. And not to mention the things that we do as Spirit of Hope in the community. Those are kind of cool as well. I'm thinking Matt Talbot Kitchen and Outreach, we had that a couple weeks ago. We are in the thick of Kicks for Kids. We'll talk more about that ministry opportunity. Putting shoes on feet in elementary schools, feet that lead them. And Meals on Wheels, another thing that kind of comes to mind. It's a Spirit of Hope thing in the community. You get the picture. Lots of different ways and places to serve. All of us are called to serve in some fashion or another. So do some praying about that. Do some thinking about that. And check out the ministry team opportunities that are in the bulletin and the e-news every week. You did know and you do read the ministry team opportunities in the bulletin and e-news every week, right? Of course you do. Thank you. And if you're a ministry team lead and we don't have you in the rotation of the ministry team opportunities, write up a short paragraph of what's going on, why it's important, why it matters, why it brings Christ's love to life. And send that to our admin Lori at info@spiritofhopelincoln.org. We will absolutely, we will gladly, we would love to put that into the rotation. In the coming week, spend a few minutes every day giving some thought and prayer to answering the question, what now? Fill in the blank with your name. That filling in the blank with your name is apparently a theme this month, isn't it? Ask the question, ask God the question, what now? And then prayerfully listen for the answer. And then go out and bring Christ's love to life. To God be the glory. Amen. If I should please stand as you are comfortable and able, we continue worship in song.